Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones, and we have tons to talk about here on the show today. Purdue football's dreams of a Big Ten West championship are still alive, but they will need to take care of Northwestern to keep that dream alive moving forward. We will preview Saturday's game at Ross-Ade in depth per usual before answering a few of your Purdue football questions. Then, just next door to Ross-Ade Stadium, Purdue basketball came back from a second-half deficit to defeat Marquette in the Gavitt games last night inside Mackey Arena. It was a lot of fun. It was a good atmosphere there, and I have plenty of thoughts from that game in addition to one very good basketball question to close us out. Excited for this one. It's a packed episode. Let's get into it. Real quick, make sure you follow the show on Twitter at Boilers Beyond if you don't already. Again, this time of year, there's so much going on left and right. Be sure you follow there so that you get up-to-minute thoughts and news. And subscribe to Boilers and Beyond wherever you get your podcasts. We're going to be here all winter long coming to you. Football news, football previews for a bowl game, basketball news, analysis, everything. So you'll want to be sure that you are subscribed wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss anything along the road. All right, Saturday, another week, another game. It is crazy. I say this every week, but it is crazy how fast the season has gone. It's already week 12. Purdue only has 2 regular season games left. They'll take on Northwestern on Saturday. Noon Eastern time kickoff on FS1 for those of you watching at home. And look, Purdue is more than a 2-touchdown favorite. I think I've seen that number mostly hovering around the 19 mark as of late, with a total somewhere in the low to mid 40s. So Purdue's a heavy favorite here. Very, very heavy favorite. And it's going to be cold. Looking at the weather forecast, it's going to be one of the chillier games at Ross-Ade Stadium that I can remember in a while. There have been some cold ones, but this one's going to be right up there. High is going to be around 30 degrees. But those wind chills are going to stay pretty low, into the teens during the game. Going to be breezy. So if you're coming to Ross-Ade Stadium, you're going to want to bundle up without a doubt. Bring plenty of warm clothing. It's going to be a chilly afternoon in Ross-Ade Stadium, and it will be the final time that fans are in Ross-Ade Stadium before renovations begin. They're going to get going on that here pretty soon. So it'll be the last time of Ross-Ade in its current configuration. So that will be something for fans to take note of. Look, Purdue's bringing in Northwestern, and it's not been a good season for the Wildcats. It's really not been a good 2 years here. You remember back to that 2020 COVID season. Northwestern won the Big Ten West that year, and they gave Justin Fields and Ohio State quite the game in Indianapolis in that Big Ten championship game. But other than that, the last 4 years have really not been good for Northwestern. They went 3-9 back in 2019, struggled mightily in that. Then they had the nice year in 2020. Last season they went 3-9, again really struggled. And now you're looking at Northwestern, 10 games in, 1-9 overall, 1-6 in the Big Ten. Just not a lot of good things to say about this season for the Wildcats. They won that season opener. They went over to Dublin, and they took down Nebraska. And at that time, you didn't know what to expect. You have one data point. But it was quickly evident that win was far more about Nebraska than it was Northwestern. They come home, and they lose all 3 of their non-conference games. Duke, Southern Illinois, and Miami, Ohio. Now, Duke is pretty decent this year, but Southern Illinois and Miami, Ohio, not good. It just they haven't been good at all. They've been blown out of more games than they've been in of late. And, I think it's hard for me to necessarily analyze the Northwestern program fully because I'm not all that close to it. But they're in a really tough spot in modern-day college football. You look at the two latest trends in college sports, the transfer portal, the anytime transfer, and name, image, and likeness. Neither of those favor Northwestern at all. Given the academic restrictions that Northwestern's stuck operating with, it's really hard to go flip a roster in the transfer portal. Even schools in the Big Ten that are more academically focused, and I would consider Purdue to be one of those, just the approach they take to sports, Purdue can still go out in the transfer portal and add pieces. Northwestern's not really able to do that. And as far as NIL goes, look, their alumni have money, but they don't care about winning. If Northwestern cared about winning, they wouldn't be in this spot right now. They wouldn't be the historically bottom of the Big Ten athletic department that they've been. So it's a tough spot. Pat Fitzgerald is a heck of a coach. No one is doubting that. Everything he's done at Northwestern has been incredible. But you look at where that program is now, man, it's getting tough. And at Northwestern, it's really tough when you don't have a quarterback. This is an offense averaging just 15 points a game. And you look at the last 4 seasons of Northwestern, the one season they were good, they had good quarterback play when Peyton Ramsey was there. Other than that, it's been a rotating cast of not very good quarterbacks. You look at this year's group, and Ryan Helinski began the season as their starter. He was around last year. They kind of had 3 guys play throughout last year. Helinski was one of them. He looked good in that game against Nebraska. And you thought, man, maybe he took a big step forward. Again, that was all about Nebraska. Things didn't go well for him from there on out. Brendan Sullivan came in. He was a pretty highly rated recruit. One of the more highly touted players Northwestern's brought in. And he's started some games recently. Look, it's been up and down. He's a redshirt freshman, so you have to really be careful with expectations. There's been good, there's been bad. But last week in their game against Minnesota, both guys, Sullivan knocked out in the first half due to injury. In the second half, Helinski was carted off the field. Northwestern ended up playing 4 quarterbacks in that game, and they weren't competitive. Put up a total of 3 points. That's not good. So where are they here? I'm recording this on Wednesday night. It sounds like there is no inclination as to who is going to play quarterback for Northwestern on Saturday. Maybe by the time you're listening to this, it's out there who's going to play. So I apologize. As I sit here right now, I think common logic would say if Helinski was carted off last week, probably not going to play. I don't know what Sullivan did. Northwestern doesn't really release a whole lot about injuries, but I would think he's more likely to play. And if neither of them can go, then you're down to the 3rd and 4th stringers. I don't know. I'm going to guess Sullivan plays, but, I don't know enough about this injury situation to really comment. Northwestern wants to run the ball. They would like to run the ball as much as possible, and they have a nice little running back who can do it. They have Evan Hull. He's been around there for a while. He was the lead rusher for Northwestern against Purdue last year. Look, he's not the most explosive, but he runs hard. He fights hard for extra yards. He's a really good receiving back out of the backfield. Very valuable there. He's a good player. He's someone that, Jeff Brom was asked about both on his radio show tonight and earlier in the press conference on Monday. And he had a lot of good things to say about Evan Hull. Purdue's going to make him a priority. You look at the number 2 back as well, and it's interesting. Cam Porter. He's a name that you may remember. He led Northwestern in rushing in 2020 and then was hurt before the season last year. Missed the entire season. He's been up and down this year. Production's been up and down. But, for a number 2 running back, he's good. Purdue will certainly monitor Northwestern's run game, and that's going to be what Purdue is focused on stopping. Purdue is absolutely going to try to make Northwestern's quarterbacks beat it. The numbers are in your favor if you can do that. They do have one receiver I like. I like Malik Washington. He's been around for a couple years now. And look, he's not anything crazy, but he's solid. A shorter receiver. I think he's just 5'9", 5'10", but he can make a play. Besides him, it's a pretty rank and file group. A lot of guys out there that are just a guy. Not ideal. Again, that's never been a place where Northwestern's really thrived in terms of talent, but it's not a great receiver room. The one guy who, if you're an NFL draft fan, and I know there are many of them out there, keep an eye on Northwestern's left tackle, Peter Skoronski. He's going to be a first rounder by all accounts, so keep an eye on him. See what Purdue does there. Because of that, I would expect Purdue to really look to bring pressure on the right side. You'd like to bring it off the blind side, but I think Purdue's going to really try to get home off the right side. Avoid Skoronski a little bit just because of how strong he is there at left tackle. Defensively, when you look at Northwestern, they're not what they're used to being. They just aren't good at all. They're allowing 200 rushing yards per game, and it's so Northwestern-like. So un-Northwestern-like, excuse me. It's just not what that program has been. You think of Pat Fitzgerald, a big thumping linebacker. That's not on this team this year. They don't have those downhill linebackers that are really making a ton of big plays. Just look at what happened last week. Minnesota only threw the ball 13 times last week. They ran it 58 times for over 300 yards. That's almost unheard of, but that's what teams are able to do against Northwestern. And if you look at strictly yards per game, yeah, you would think that Northwestern's pass defense is really good. But you look at yards per attempt, and, they're allowing 7 yards per attempt. That's not great, not bad, but, it really just indicates that against Northwestern, teams are able to run the ball so much that they really don't have to throw the ball. I think Purdue is absolutely going to do that. And, Northwestern does have one good pass rusher. I really can't pronounce his name, Adebaware, something like that. He's been around a while, 4 sacks on the year. Purdue will keep an eye on him. But this Northwestern defense, when they have been at their best, they're better than this. And right now, they're allowing 28 points a game. And with what their offense is doing, that simply isn't good enough. Looking at the injury report for Purdue, we talked about this a little bit on the show on Sunday. Purdue had 2 linebackers leave the game and not come back in Champaign. Talked about how their status would be key to monitor. Kyron Douglas, unlikely to play. That injury didn't look good. He picked off the pass after it hit Lawrence Johnson's face mask. Popped in the air, Douglas picked it off, but that injury didn't look good. I hope it wasn't his final play. I have a bad feeling it was. We'll see if he can get back for Indiana. We'll see if he tries to make it back for a bowl game. And then Clyde Washington, He got hurt earlier on in the game. Jeff Brom said he'll be out for a while. You don't get a lot of clear answers about injuries with Purdue. Out for a while is code for we may not see him again this year. So, not great there. That makes that inside linebacker situation awfully thin. You're going to see O.C. Brothers. You're going to see Jacob Wahlberg. Those will be your two starting guys on the inside. Of course, Jalen Graham is out there as well. And then, if they need to get back, into the second, third unit, you've got Samisi Fakasieki there playing his last game at Ross-Ade. Ben Kryl, Yanni Karlaftis, maybe. He just moved inside linebacker a few weeks ago, I think, but maybe he's that guy. Branson Dean got hurt, came back into the game. Jeff Brom said he would be a later in the week decision. My hunch is going to be that he plays his final game in Ross-Ade Stadium. I bet he gets out there if he can. Looking at this one, Purdue Northwestern. Purdue massively favored. 3 keys to the game for Purdue to get a win. Look, Purdue needs to come out strong here. And they haven't been a fast starting team at all this year. Even last week, Purdue did move the ball a little bit, but they didn't get any points early on. That's not ideal, but if you look at this game and if you can get out to an early lead, you're playing a team that's lost 9 games in a row. It's going to be freezing. They're away from home. If you can get up 10-0, get up 14-0, get up 14-3, how much want to is Northwestern going to have? I'm not saying that Pat Fitzgerald doesn't have his guys ready to play. He, of course, will, but it's natural. When you're freezing on that sideline and you have to take that parka off to go out there and play, man, it's not going to be ideal. If Purdue can come out strong and get an early advantage, I think you're in a really good spot. Number 2, I think the turnover battle is really important here. At times, that's really gotten Purdue. And even though Northwestern's defense isn't what it typically is, it's not one that you can just completely not show up against. If you make careless decisions with the ball and you put the ball in harm's way, they'll take it. This is still the Big Ten. Aiden O'Connell's been a little turnover prone at times this year. His 11 interceptions lead the Big Ten. He needs to avoid those on Saturday, and I think Purdue will be in good shape. On the other side, you'd love to see Purdue force some turnovers. They haven't been very good at that this year, but who knows what Northwestern's going to do at quarterback? I have no idea. Regardless of who is back there, it's someone who can probably throw some interceptions. So see what you can do. See if one of your senior defensive backs can go out there and make a play. You win that turnover battle, you're going to win the game. And then number 3, Gus Hartwig had his hat on after the Cannon game saying run the damn ball. Look, you have to make Northwestern stop the run. I know that Purdue likes to throw the ball, as they should, and they can be pretty good at it. But this is going to be a game played in 30 degrees. It's going to be breezy. Northwestern's run defense is not very good. Statistically, it's one of the worst in America. And Devin Maccabee's been running the ball well. Feed him early and often. Get Dylan Downing. Get Kobe Lewis involved if needed. But make Northwestern stop the run. They haven't stopped good running backs at all this year. And I'm not saying that Purdue's running game is 2009 Alabama, but get Maccabee the ball. Make them load up to stop the run. And then once you get them with 8 in the box, that's when you can hit them with some play action and see if you can take those shots downfield to Charlie Jones. Get a shot across the middle to Payne Durham. See what you can do there. But make them stop the run first. Make them sell out to do it. Looking at a prediction for this game, 19's a big number. I think Purdue more than certainly can cover it, but man, I'm going to go with 30-14 Purdue wins. It's just not a good Northwestern team. The weather doesn't favor Purdue. There's a lot on the line here, though. Number one, it's senior day, and there are a lot of guys on this Purdue roster who are going to be playing their last game at Ross-Ade, really going to be missed next year. Guys who have done quite a bit for this program. This is an interesting senior class. You look at 2019, when a lot of these guys were forced into early action, probably before they were ready. A season that didn't go well for Purdue. Nor did 2020. But you look at what they've done the last 2 years with so many of these guys playing key roles. I mean, I've got some names here, and it's not even close to all of them. But, Aiden O'Connell, Charlie Jones for 1 year has been a godsend. Payne Durham, Eric Miller, Lawrence Johnson, Branson Dean, Jalen Graham, Corey Trice, Cam Allen. A lot of these guys have been mainstays over the past 3 or 4 years. Guys who have grown up in this program under Jeff Brom, and guys who have been really, really good players for Purdue. This is going to be their last one. I think they'll come out with plenty of motivation. We know the situation in the Big Ten West. It is no secret. It is a situation where Purdue needs to win out. They have to beat Northwestern. They have to beat Indiana. And they need Iowa to lose one of its final 2 games. The Hawkeyes are a slight underdog at Minnesota this weekend. And then Iowa hosts Nebraska on Black Friday to end the season. A translation there, Purdue needs Iowa to lose this weekend because I don't think they are going to lose to Nebraska. None of that matters, of course, if Purdue can't beat a bad Northwestern team. That leads us right into our first question in the Q&A. Does Minnesota beat Iowa? That's what we all want to know. I wish I had an answer to that. That's a close spread, and I could make some money if I knew the answer to that. But gun to my head here, I'm going to say Iowa wins. This is just the type of game that Kirk Ferentz teams tend to win. Now, last year, Minnesota played spoiler in the Big Ten West race themselves. Wisconsin just needed to beat Minnesota to get to Indianapolis. Minnesota won that game. Can they do it again this year? They certainly could. Is Tanner Morgan going to play for Minnesota? He's questionable. He didn't play last week. Look, if they can't throw the ball, whether it's Morgan or it's the backup, I got a tough time seeing it happen. Even if Tanner Morgan's in there and healthy, I'm going to lean with the Hawkeyes on Saturday. Unfortunately, it would be big time if they can drop it and Purdue can win the game on Saturday and go to Bloomington with a chance to win the Big Ten West. For Purdue, which loss has hurt more to this point, Garrett Miller or Milton Wright? I'm going Milton Wright without a doubt here. Look, and that's not to take anything away from Garrett Miller. I think it would have been really fun to see what Purdue could have done with 2 really good tight ends on this team. That would have been a lot of fun. But, you're really projecting what Purdue could do with 2 tight end personnel. You see it a little bit, but you don't see much of it right now. That's more of a projection. You know how much Purdue relies on dynamic receivers. And you've seen that become a massive story this year, that Purdue doesn't have a real consistent threat outside of Charlie Jones from the receiver position. TJ Sheffield's had some really good games, but he's, kind of more of a slot guy. In all reality, he's being asked to play outside, but he's more of a slot guy. I think Milton Wright was poised to have a massive year. You look at that. You look at the target share that went to David Bell last year, that's gone to Charlie Jones this year. Milton Wright might have gotten that. He would have gotten a ton of targets, that's for sure, and he's a good receiver. It's a bummer what happened there because he and Charlie Jones could have been a very good 1-2 receiver combo. that could have been lethal. I think the outlook on this team changes if you have another receiver of that caliber. So that's a real bummer. I'm going to absolutely say that Milton Wright was the bigger loss. Not to say that Garrett Miller wasn't. And my answer to this would change if Payne Durham had gotten hurt this year. He's certainly battled through quite a bit. He's been banged up with plenty, but he's gotten every Saturday. If Purdue didn't have Payne Durham, then I think Garrett Miller becomes that answer. But Payne Durham's been good. He's been able. He's been healthy. That's helped offset that loss a lot. Would 8-4 be considered a successful season if Purdue does not make the Big Ten championship game, or would you consider it a letdown with the opportunities Purdue has had? It is absolutely a successful season. Look, if you look at the quality of play that's been on the field this year, I don't know that this team is as good as I thought they would be. Coming into the season, coming into the preseason, I don't think they've been as good as I thought they were going to be. Now, their record is right in line with what I thought it would be, but I don't know that the team has been as good as I thought. Purdue's absolutely missed some opportunities, and you are absolutely right to point those out. You know, they had a real chance to beat Penn State. Penn State's on their way to a 10-2 season, and they've looked good doing it. They gave Ohio State all they could handle. Of course, you had that loss at Syracuse. An incredible disappointment. One of the more disappointing outcomes from a Purdue game I've seen in a while. Iowa, Wisconsin, you weren't close in those games. But on the flip side, this season absolutely could have gone off the rails. What if Florida Atlantic doesn't fumble that quarterback sneak? You know, Sanusi Kane recovered it, and all was good. Well, all was okay because Purdue survived that game. What if they got that first down and continue on that drive? Purdue's defense wasn't good that day. Did the Owls score? Does Purdue lose to a Conference USA team? What about those trips to Minneapolis and College Park? That tipped ball that should have been a touchdown that Cam Allen intercepted in Minneapolis? What if that goes the other way? Purdue over in Maryland. What if that goes the other way? What if Purdue doesn't pull that one out? What if Purdue doesn't convert that fourth down late against Nebraska? They weren't getting another stop in that game. This season could have gone in a whole opposite direction for the worse. And I think when you look at it, it all kind of has evened out to Purdue being 6-4 with 2 games left that they should win. It's been a decent year. I think it's been a good year. And I think Brock Spack's famous words still ring true. He said it after the 2006 season, and he was absolutely right. If it wasn't proven true from what happened from 2007 to 2017, I don't know what to tell you. He said, if you're getting tired of winning 8 games at Purdue, then we're in some serious trouble. He's right. He's absolutely right. It's tough to do better than that at Purdue. So I think those words are extremely applicable to this situation, and I don't think it's a disappointment at all. Last football question here before we get into hoops. Do you think any Purdue player might opt out of the bowl game? Yeah, it's absolutely a possibility. I think, personally, I think it should be considered by anyone who considers themselves to be a draft pick or who is viewed as a draft pick. I don't love the trend. I certainly don't think it's good for college football, but I can't sit here and blame anyone who considers it or goes through with it. There aren't any high-end draft picks on this team, like a George Karlaftis from last year, like a David Bell from last year. But, you know, if guys like Jalen Graham or Corey Trice or Charlie Jones hear that, you know, it's probably in your best interest to sit out, I can't blame them if they do that. At the end of the day, there's only so much that can be gained for them to go out there. And there's a whole lot that can be lost. So I would absolutely think that Purdue has at least one player opt out. I'm not going to put money on who it would be by any means, but I think someone will opt out. Basketball time. Purdue 75, Marquette 70. That one was really fun. That was an awesome win for a really young team. Quite a bit of resiliency there. Purdue was really tested in that game. They had some turnovers early on. Then they clawed back. Marquette took a big second half lead, and Purdue fought right back, went on a run, and it propelled them to victory. When Marquette went on that run, I really didn't think Purdue was going to win that game. I really didn't. I don't know how good Marquette is or how good they're not, but winning that game is an awesome boost of confidence for Purdue. This is a game where I think if Purdue plays this game in January, Purdue wins pretty comfortably. But in November, with how young this team is, boy, I don't know. I didn't know what to expect coming in. And, when Purdue went on that run late, I think you saw a team that has a whole lot of fight to them. A team that's really competitive. And that is headlined by their freshman point guard. I can't say enough good things about Braden Smith. I said it last week. I'm saying it again this week. It's going to take everything I have to not rename this podcast Braden Smith and Beyond, because he is so much fun to watch. He is special, for how under-recruited he was. Purdue being his only high major offer. Man, he is very good. What he did down the stretch of that game, Purdue hasn't seen a point guard like that in some time. And really, to take over that game for a true freshman in his third Division I game, you don't see that happen. He was incredible scoring the ball, incredible facilitating the ball. He handled that game so well. A very pressure-packed moment late in that game. After Marquette went up, I think they were up 9. Braden Smith didn't flinch. I can't say enough about the performance he put on. I think David Jenkins Jr. looks like a really good addition to this point. I wanted to be hesitant with him early on because, I remember early on in 2019, 2020, Jihad Proctor looked good in the non-conference, especially in some of those bye games. But as Big Ten came along, he didn't really do much. I don't think David Jenkins Jr. is that type of guy. I think he's a better shooter, and I think his game is just a little bit more translatable to the Big Ten. He looks like an awesome addition, both from a ball handling perspective and from a scoring perspective. Purdue's going to need someone to handle the ball when Braden Smith's out of the game. David Jenkins Jr. looked like that type of player yesterday. I thought he looked really comfortable with the ball in his hands. Knocked down some nice shots. He was, yet led the game in plus minus. He was really good. It was obvious from the start that Shaka Smart really wanted to limit what Ross-Ade could do. They had all sorts of different approaches there. They tried to front him really good. They tried to double on the catch. They certainly were doubling on the bounce. Hell, they had guys really, sagging in on him to try to make him get the ball out of his hands. And they did a pretty nice job of that in the first half. But Purdue ran a lot of stuff to get him one-on-one matchups early in the second half. That went well. He rebounded well. Finished the game with 20 points, 13 boards. Quite the day for Ross-Ade. He's off to a really good start, especially these last 2 games. He's been excellent. I think on the defensive end, it's still a work in progress. Purdue's guards are not necessarily great on defense yet. They've got a ways to go. Marquette is a tough challenge. They really got lost at times. Marquette did a nice job of moving the ball around. You've got some freshman guards. You have some guards who aren't great on defense. Brandon Newman still struggled a little bit there. He's been really good on the offensive end, had a great rebounding game, but he struggled on defense a bit. I thought it was really impressive to see Brian Waddell come in and really be the only guy who could slow down David Joplin. He got really hot. Waddell cooled him off. And then at the end of the game, I did not expect to see Brian Waddell and Fletcher Lawyer going defense-offense late in the game, but it worked. It absolutely worked. Waddell gave up a really tough three in the corner there to Joplin. And then I don't know what happened on that continuation that gave Marquette 3 shots at the line. Questionable at best, but, so be it. Waddell had a nice game defensively, still trying to get in rhythm offensively. No doubt about that there. There's still a lot of growth to go for this team. They're by no means a finished product. They're not close. I saw this, and I guess it's true. I don't know that Purdue's the only power conference program to be starting 2 true freshmen in their backcourt. If that's the case, that's pretty crazy. They look the part, though. Both of those guys look the part. And what Purdue has here is a really nice foundation. And what you're going to see them do is grow throughout the season. There are going to be highs. There are going to be lows. Don't worry about that. I still think Purdue's going to lose a game it has no business losing at some point early on in this season. There are going to be highs and lows for Braden Smith. There are going to be freshman moments there. Same deal for Fletcher Lawyer. He missed the front end of 2 or 3 1-and-1s yesterday. I think the front end of 2 1-and-1s, that's not like him. But again, he's never shot free throws in that type of an environment either. This team still has to come together. They still have to figure out rotations a little bit. I think at this point, Camden Heidi's a very obvious red shirt. I don't know where those minutes would come. There's not been a decision made there yet, but of course Purdue has held him out to preserve that option. I think he looks like an obvious red shirt. At the end of the day, that was a phenomenal win. You can't say enough about Purdue finding a way to tough that one out. That's a game that last year's team would not have won. Purdue got enough stops down the stretch to give them a chance to flip that game. And that's ultimately what they did. Braden Smith took it over, and Purdue won that game. They now go, they have a week off basically before they go out to Portland for PK 85. Out there, Purdue will face some really good competition. And you're going to learn a lot about them. 3 games in 4 days. And I'll have a little more of that here in a moment because we had a very good question about Zach Edey's usage and production, saying it's very high right now. He's been really good, but you have Big Ten play, increased competition coming up. Who needs to step up in that spot to help Purdue maintain their offensive efficiency? And I think the main thing with Edey, his usage rate's going to be incredibly high. I'm not surprised by that. But the last 2 games, he played 30 minutes against Austin Peay, and he played 33 minutes last night against Marquette. If you ask me, that is probably not sustainable. I don't think you're getting that many minutes out of him this year. I don't think that's going to be something that is a regular. And you have 3 games in 4 days at PK 85. It's going to become an issue then. He can't be playing 30 minutes then. And you look at that combination of Caleb First and Trey Kaufman-Renn for that production. What we've seen so far, Kaufman-Renn's a legit low-post scorer. When he gets in one-on-one matchups there, he can do some really good stuff. Now, he's not a 7'2" giant that Purdue has had recently that if they're doubled, they can sometimes score over the guy. That's not going to be Trey Kaufman's game, but if you can isolate him one-on-one, he can do some nice things. I think Caleb First is more of that 5-out type of center, but you saw some of the value he brings, like that dunk off of the cut late in the game yesterday. Now, he hasn't shot the 3-ball well. I know that there's a lot of confidence that he's going to shoot the 3-ball well. Time will tell there. He's certainly getting some good looks. They're just not going down. And the 2 he took against Marquette really weren't close. But, I I think that's where that production is going to come from. You're not going to replicate Zach Edey. You're not going to replicate how efficient he is, but I think you can do some really interesting things with him off the floor. That's going to start out in Portland. We'll have plenty more on that next week. But for today, that's all I have. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for spending some time with me. Sunday, we'll be back here to recap Purdue versus Northwestern. We'll see what the outlook is like for Purdue football as it pertains to the Big Ten West. We will have a full recap episode. And then next week, we'll preview the Old Oak and Bucket matchup, as well as Purdue's trip out to Portland for PK85. Follow the show on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss anything. Until next time, guys, bundle up, stay warm, stay safe if you're coming up here on Saturday, and I will talk to you on Sunday.